And like now you can look backwards on it, I guess, as opposed to at that time where you were looking right at it. What's changed over the last 3 years?
Yeah, you know, from time to time, I do look at like some old clips of my interviews back then, and you know, I kind of feel bad for myself because I was like a little kid. You know, the company was private. I was always, particularly at that time, I was just very focused on getting the technology to work, and I didn't really want to be in the public eye, and I certainly didn't see myself as, you know, some kind of political figure wrapped up in some kind of political quarrel over investing or regulation. I think what happened was, you know, GameStop, for better or worse, put Robinhood sort of like firmly into the zeitgeist, right? Before it was a little fringe. I mean, we still had a lot of customers, but we weren't like a politicized brand. And I think at that point, I really had to learn really quickly, not just how to like build technology and lead teams to do it, but also how to represent the company. And, you know, it's like, you can see in those interviews, I'm kind of like reading a script, and that was my approach to interviews for a while. I was like reading my points and trying to communicate the facts of the message. But, you know, now I know, now that I'm much more wise and mature, and still not nearly as experienced as you've probably done thousands of these, right? But it doesn't really resonate with our audience to just like read the facts. You have to give some emotion and some feeling and have some empathy, and you know, there has to be a little bit more. So I've had to kind of learn all that stuff, and now they just look incredibly inauthentic and robotic. And I think the more time has passed, the more I'm kind of trying to be as authentic as possible in my appearances. And I think that had to be something that I learned. And doing so, especially in that time where the stakes were super high and we were about to go public, and you know, you have like all sorts of advisors and lawyers and, you know, professionals that are trying to protect me and the firm, saying, don't say this, be careful not to say this, be careful when you're kind of making this point that you don't make people think that you're actually meaning this. So, and you know, if you're kind of running the algorithm through your head of like what you can't say and what you should say, and how what you're saying could be kind of like interpreted.
It's exhausting hearing
exactly.
about it.
Yeah, eventually, to some degree, like you practice enough and it becomes second nature, and you can kind of rip up all the guidelines and be pretty confident that you're doing the right thing. But I think it has to be authentic. And back then I was just like very inexperienced at all of this stuff. I sort of undervalued it. And I think it took a while for me to get to like a basic level of competency.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's fair. I think like every founder goes through that journey of like, you've been building something in private in a room or an office for so many years, and all of a sudden your company gets notoriety in mainstream culture.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're having to do things that you don't necessarily set out to do as a founder. I feel like even actors go through that, where you're just working on a movie on a set, and then you have to go promote the movie, or you're seen in public and something impacts the movie, and that wasn't necessarily what you signed up for. What were the actual ramifications or consequences of all of that? Like how did that actually affect Robinhood, apart from the cultural propelling?
Well, I think a lot of people who were just like looking at me at the time, and maybe were not Robinhood users themselves. Maybe some of them were Robinhood users, but others were kind of thinking about it and were aware of it. I think some people got the impression that I just like maybe didn't care about our customers. And I think that was the part that actually like pained me and kind of stayed with me over time. They're like, oh, look at him. He doesn't have any emotions, and he's just like talking about these clearinghouse regulatory requirements, but he doesn't understand the pain that kind of customers went through who wanted to, you know, buy GameStop or AMC or all these other things. I mean, like, I definitely understood the pain. Those were some of the most painful, sleepless nights for me, going through that whole ordeal. But yeah, my approach was always just, I don't want to like talk about doing stuff. I like to do stuff. So I'm not gonna like maybe I'm not gonna be like super emotive with my customers, but I'm just gonna build them great products that save them tons of money and give them a great experience so that they can learn to invest and manage their money. I think that was painful. Obviously, the collusion narrative was painful because it was like false.
But it was never proven. There was no like.
It was disproven. Yeah. I mean, learning how to communicate and actually like, to some degree, like going through a crisis and then surviving and then sort of like learning from it and building back better so that you don't actually repeat the same thing again. I mean, Robinhood's had our share of issues over the years. Like we definitely haven't been perfect, but I mean, one thing I'm proud of is they're all like, we've made mistakes, but they're a series of original mistakes. So we tend not to make the, same mistake twice. And so like throughout all of these, we've just like built up a ton of scar tissue and learnings and have been a much stronger company. And I think all of this, all of the crises, I remember the dates, it's like,
wow.
It's like January 28th, 2021 or December 12th, 2018 or March 2nd, 2020, right at the beginning of COVID when we had a day-long trading outage. So you kind of remember all of these events and kind of take different things away from them. But I mean, at the end of the day, we've been a company for 10 years and you're gonna, if you're in a disruptive space where you're kind of challenging the status quo and trying to change things, some people are going to be unhappy, right? And you have to have thick skin to kind of get through that.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, isn't it? When companies are doing something for the first time, it's inevitable that there's going to be mistakes and mismanagement and challenges. And I think,
and it's almost like, if you're being too careful, if you actually make zero mistakes, you might not be successful. You're probably not going to be successful because you're just like not pushing hard enough. Like it's like at some point, not taking any risk is like the biggest risk of all, particularly in like a hot competitive market. So you have to know the right amount. I think it's somewhat of a fine dance.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not acceptable to like play everything super safe in the world of business.
And I guess the challenge is because it's dealing with people's money, it's even a more heightened.
There's a heightened sense of safety. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and people can be very emotional about their money.